Welcome to Remix EQ Live, where we're amplifying equity with a remix of information, interviews, and inspiration. I'm your host, Dr. Erica Tate, and today I am broadcasting live from Savannah, Georgia, where I live. For those joining us today, please drop a greeting of choice in the comments. Let us know where you are joining us from and the equity driven work you do or aspire to do. And remember, Remix EQ Live is an experience that's meant to be shared. So I encourage you to hit your share or invite buttons and bring along your people, your network, your family, your friends, your peeps to join our Remix EQ Live community today. This season, we are broadcasting live on LinkedIn and YouTube. We can now connect more broadly, growing our reach and building our learning community. And while those comments are flowing in and those invitations are flowing out, I want to remind you that Remix EQ Live offers the opportunity for us to connect and build community with each other around the equity driven work being performed throughout the world. And we do this by centering the work. That is, our guests and viewers share examples of what they do in their role or position as a way to illustrate the innovative, effective, and meaningful ways they advance equity in the spaces in which they live, work, learn, and play. So throughout the show and in the comments, I invite you to also share with us what you do to make the world a more just place. It is season 6 of Remix EQ Live, and today I am interviewing researcher, healer, social justice warrior, Dr. Eva M. Shivers. Dr. Eva is the founding executive director of Indigo Cultural Center, a national nonprofit organization focused on healing justice in the areas of early childhood development, education, and mental health. And today we are foregrounding healing and well being as we discuss infant and early childhood mental health in the Black community. We'll listen and learn from Dr. Eva about how she frames and approaches her work in this space and why she has chosen to center healing and liberation as she works to make the world a more just place. This episode is for families and caregivers of young children, childcare staff and directors, and those who support them. Also, early childhood educators, social workers, and others who support young children and their families. And of course, for anyone who has ever been younger than they are today. That's right, everybody. And since we're not getting any younger, let us begin this conversation for change. Welcome, Dr. Eva M. Shivers.
Yay! Dr. Erica, your energy, I love it. I am feeling it, and it is fueling me much better than my coffee.
I love it. I'm so glad you're here. Forces of nature cannot stop us. Oh, and I invite you, Dr. Eva, to introduce yourself. And as you do, please share 1 to 2 career or personal twists and turns that have led you to your current role.
Ooh, okay. Well, you shared a little bit about what I do in the ecosystem of early childhood. And so in thinking about what else I'd like to share that helps, I guess, our viewers and listeners understand a little bit more where I come from. I'll just start with my identity. I identify as a cisgender African American woman. Technically, I'm biracial. My mom is German. I was born in Germany. German was my first language. My father is African American. I am the descendant of enslaved Africans. We immigrated here from Germany when I was really, really young. And I was born in 1970. And in terms of interracial relationships in this country, in 1967, that's when the US versus Loving Supreme Court case was decided, and that made it finally legal for a Black person to marry a white person. I was born 3 years after that. And the generation of biracial children kind of born in the aftermath of US versus Loving were known as the Loving generation. And many of us, although technically biracial, many of us do identify as Black. Societal attitudes towards Black folks hadn't changed a whole lot since the court case. I had very early racialized experiences, not great. That really made it very clear that I'm Black. The way I was socialized by my parents, we were the first Black family to integrate our neighborhood in the 70s. So my identity is firmly rooted as a Black woman. And I say this because that identity as a Black woman has continued to grow and blossom, especially now, now that I'm post menopause now. And as Black women, I love talking about our whole continuum of development from infancy all the way to our golden years, our aging years. And so much of who I am and what I'm experiencing in this world as a Black woman, and to name the privilege of having lighter skin, talking the way that I do, it has opened many doors. But because my identity is firmly rooted in who I am and who my ancestors are, I have used that privilege to kind of kick through doors and say things that need to be said, and to do things that need to be said, or do things that need to be done. So yeah, I grew up in Arizona, Tempe, Arizona. I went to Arizona State University for undergrad. I was an English literature major, and I specialized in African American literature, specifically Black women authors, and literature from the Harlem Renaissance and civil rights rhetoric. I went to Howard for law school. That's why I got interested in policy. Then I danced in New York for a while, and that was a big twist for me. That's like where the first big twist happened after law school in DC. I was not very happy with the corporate law track I was on. And really, I think in order to just save my soul and save myself, I leaned into my artist identity and danced for a number of years. And those experiences within that artistic community and being a dancer and being in my body also plays so much. It has still so much resonance in what we do at Indigo. Our approach to the work, we focus a lot on embodied healing. We like to infuse joy and pleasure and creativity in what we do. So music and dance and visual art really influences our work a lot. It's not just in that academic tradition. So that was a really big twist and turn. And then after my PhD at UCLA, I was on faculty at the University of Pittsburgh. And my favorite part about doing that was mentoring students, mostly a lot of Black students. And then another twist and turn was when I left academia very intentionally and very conscientiously, realizing a lot of the white supremacy that was operating in these so-called very progressive spaces. And, I guess had the audacity to start Indigo Cultural Center 17 years ago. And, over the past 17 years, Indigo has been a dream space, a playground, I would say a force for change within the infant and early childhood mental health community. And I'm really proud of what our small and mighty team has created together. So I think I'll stop there for now, but it tells a lot about who I am and how I show up in the world.
Yes, I love it. I was like, oh, it's already, I never know which twists and turns I'm going to hear about, but I'm very excited to I love the historical context that you provided for your coming into the world, as well as how you became who you are and where you sit now, and that you were a dancer. I think it's really great to see the variety of roles that you embodied throughout your journey, because it shows that those twists and turns have really shaped you, and they came with you, right? Like it feels like each experience that you have has come with you in your position. And as you were describing, the visual arts and the embodiment, I was like, yeah, that makes so much sense. It makes sense for the work you do, but also having our conversations, it makes sense for your energy and spirit.
Yeah, you can feel it. Yeah.
Yes, I love it. Thank you so much for sharing. Hello, Brianna Matchett. She's tuning in from Atlanta, Georgia. She says, welcome, Dr. Shivers.
Oh, thank you. Yes, love it.
Oh, so for those who are just joining us, this is Remix EQ Live, and we are amplifying equity through a remix of information, interviews, and inspiration. And now that you've had the chance to meet or reconnect with Dr. Eva M. Shivers, I know you are inviting others to tune in. And of course, I invite you to interact with us. So please post comments to say hello. Let us know you're out there. Ask questions as this conversation continues. And also share examples and learnings of what's happening with you and with you in general. And as you go through these conversations, as we dive into this interview, you are part of this Remix EQ Live experience. So now recenter this work. This is an opportunity for us to learn from Dr. Eva about how she makes the world a more just place, specifically how she applies critical perspectives of healing and liberation in the area of infant and early childhood mental health and in the Black community. So, Dr. Eva, as the founding executive director of Indigo Cultural Center, how does your work in infant and early childhood mental health foster healing and well being in the Black community?
Yeah, well, first, I don't know how many of your listeners are familiar with what infant and early childhood mental health is. And if it's okay, I'd just like to provide a little bit of orientation and a description of that. So we know from a lot of brain research and research over the past couple of decades that babies and infants, they come into this world ready and wired to form relationships just from the moment of birth, even like prenatally. Children, we know that they're forming connections and they're developing social responses. They're learning about themselves and the world around them. So, infant and early childhood mental health is really focused on kind of the developing capacity of an infant and young child. Even though we say infant and the word infant is in there, early childhood is in there, we're talking like ages 0 to about 6. So it's about their capacity to form close and secure relationships, for young children and even babies to experience, manage, and express a full range of emotions. And infant and early childhood mental health is also focused on how babies and young children explore the environment and learn, right? In the context of their family, their communities, their culture. So some people also sometimes interchangeably might say more broadly, oh, social and emotional development. Yep, that's in the realm of infant and early childhood mental health. Or increasingly, we're also hearing terms early relational health. Yep, that's also in our universe of infant and early childhood mental health. So we know that this is a very, very critical developmental period for young children, in terms of their brain development, and the capacities they develop early on really do stay with them for the rest of their lives. And so, over the past couple of decades, there have been more public investments in really supporting the well-being of these children. And we know young children don't work and live in isolation, so that means supporting the well-being of families and their caregivers. So that's a little bit of infant and early childhood mental health. So given that definition, now we apply healing justice to all of this. And healing justice, that's the framework that we really try to live into every single day, in the way that we show up in our work with one another, our small little team, in the way that we show up with our partners. And we are highly influenced by healing justice lineages. This is one of the books and one of the lineages for Indigo Cultural Center also. And it's kind of really based on work of abolitionists. And for us, when we consider, what is healing justice, it means for us thinking about our work, the long arc of our work. So we look back 7 generations, we look forward 7 generations. So this is the long arc of justice for families that have young children. I would, and it's so extractive to just say, oh, just young children. The truth is, our communities need to be healthy and healed, right? Infant and early childhood mental health is kind of like this zoom lens on the world of young children. But the reality truly is we have to consider the well-being of all of our people. So for us, looking at the long arc, it means like, how can we reimagine, right? So I have the creativity and the imagination of what does wholeness look like? What is wholeness for our people, for our families who have young children, for our communities? What does wholeness look like when we consider the kind of the intersection of intergenerational trauma? Again, that's talking specifically for Black folks. Intergenerational trauma, current structures of oppression, and also how do we generate this kind of co-created future? I'm really into Afrofuturism, and so like I think a lot about, so healing justice is looking at the longer arc of all those things. Healing justice really invites, how can we do this work with more joy and pleasure, Dr. Erica? So your playfulness, how we show up in the world. I love your higher frequency with, your approach to equity, that it matches ours as well. And it is healthier for our bodies, versus kind of the grinding that we can do for social justice, and the rate at which many activists and warriors, we get burned out. And for women, sometimes that burnout, it lands in our bodies to carry the anger and the rage inside of us. I know it was making me very unhealthy when I was in the academy. And then healing justice calls us to seek to be in right relationship first and foremost with ourselves. So we have to attune to the internal. How do we come to right relationship with one another? And so for our work with Indigo, increasingly, we're seeking unapologetically Black spaces, especially for Black women, when we can come together and heal together. And then finally, how do we come to be in right relationship with the land? Right? The land. We don't talk enough about that. And when we think about our lineage as Black folks, what has happened to our relationship with the land? So that, and then in what areas might we be complicit? My ancestors, my great grandparents, so my people come from Georgia. Like my people really, really come from Georgia. It's either Germany or Georgia. That is where my people, and or Nigeria, to be more specific. Nigeria, Georgia. And so my great grandparents, they were college educated during Reconstruction period. My great grandfather went to Morehouse. My great grandmother studied with Lucy Haynes, the Haynes Institute. They were college educated at the turn of the century, at a time where very few Black folks even knew how to read, right? And so they left Georgia and searching sovereignty. They did not want to be under those oppressive conditions that were happening in the aftermath of Reconstruction. People, in the South, the big clampdown after Black folks made some progress. Then, nope, yeah, things became really oppressive. They were seeking sovereignty, and so they benefited from the Homestead Act. Stolen land, right? The Homestead Act. Go and work the land, and then it's yours. That was stolen land. So but so it's like we have a complicated histories. They were in search of sovereignty and liberation, and they found it in the soil of New Mexico. They found it on the soil of stolen land. And so as a descendant, part of my work is to also, how do I heal that complicity as well? So we have complicated relationships. So healing justice frameworks, asks us to really consider, how do we come to right relationship with ourselves, with one another, and with the land.
No, I love your responses and the like connection to history. Like, often on the show we ask questions about like how you came to be, but like you can see how you came to be. You definitely illustrate it with your connections. Plus that idea of the arc of justice, like 7 generations past and 7 generations forward. Just like really is something that I want to keep thinking about. As you were talking, I was like, Dr. Eva is dropping all the knowledge
It goes
today.
deep. It goes deep. And I feel like we are on the precipice
Yeah.
of really understanding who we are as a people, and truly where do we come from. And the more we ground into that, the more free and liberated we will be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, so I love this idea. Like I feel like there's a wonderfully painted picture to tap into your artist painted picture of what a co-created future of liberation might be. And I was wondering, to further illustrate this work that you do in the Black community, could you describe 1 to 2 examples of infant and
Yeah.
early childhood mental health that show how this your framework is being implemented?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see, what I want to share today. Well, okay, first is, I would say, because we understand that so many of our outcomes for young children, sometimes with the industrial complex of mental health, it's tempting to just sit with the pathology within the individual, like a real deficit lens. And so that's one way that mental health is being critiqued, including infant and early childhood mental health, even though we're so warm and fuzzy and relational, and we're so reflective of one another and well-meaning and progressive. There's still so much that needs to be undone and unlearned in these models that have shaped infant and early childhood mental health. So part of what we attend to at Indigo Cultural Center is the infrastructure. And for us, it's a lot about professional development and the workforce. And so we do a lot of training and facilitation with social workers, therapists, early interventionists, infant and early childhood mental health consultants. And so a lot of it is, how do we relearn this field with more expanded paradigms? How do we, a lot of our work is at the policy and advocacy level. We've done kind of national learning tables where we work with state administrators around the country, asking them to take a look at, for example, mental health consultants who work in early care and education settings. And I think Georgia is, I know a lot of your listeners are in Georgia. I think Georgia is now developing an infant and early childhood mental health consultation program. And what we're finding is that this is one way that we can bring infant and early childhood mental health into the community, right? Childcare, ubiquitous childcare, and not just center-based, formal Head Start, public pre-K. Infant and early childhood mental health consultation is now going into home-based childcare, licensed family childcare, family friend and neighbor care. These are for all the early care and education people out there. Like, come on, let's talk about it. Let's talk some shop. Yes. So how do we support the well-being of those caregivers? So this is mental health brought into the community. And so as I'm setting this up for you, you can see how having a mental health consultant who shares your cultural background, who not only knows something about your community, but loves and cares about the community. You see how this can play into what a mental health consultant brings into that childcare space. Well, currently, the mental health consultation workforce is primarily white and female. And so we do research here at Indigo Cultural Center. We've done a lot of research. And so we're finding that when a mental health consultant shares the same racial ethnic match as the caregiver, the teacher, the early educator, we see different kinds of outcomes for children, racialized outcomes. We see racial gaps closing. Okay. So that's one pathway. Another pathway is for those consultants who are white, if they have a strong background, a strong kind of grounding in principles of anti-racism, in principles of anti-bias, in principles of equity and liberation, we're seeing similar trends in child data, reducing those racialized outcomes, like suspension and expulsion from preschool. That's a really big one that a lot of policymakers are caring about these days. So our work at Indigo is kind of shaping the infrastructure and really working with that workforce, advocating for more diversity, not just face value diversity, but really, people who understand how to connect with folks in their community. And I think I'll stop there. For that covers a lot of what we do. We're in the infrastructure, we're in the machinery, because we understand that it's not just about like the front facing work. It's what is in that machine. We have inherited these like structures of oppression, and our medicine needs to address the machinery. We need to figure out how to dismantle some things. We do a lot of work in decolonization. So yeah, that's where we live. We live in the kind of the machinery of it.
Yeah. No, thank you. I mean, because this is like your systems change work, and it's really great to see examples of what that looks and sounds like. And also that for those who are in the space or thinking about going into the space of how your lived experiences or your learning about lived experiences and frameworks can really close gaps in this space. And so I appreciate that. Dr. Gwendolyn Martin, she says, I concur as a Black mental health therapist who primarily works with children. So,
Yes.
yeah, so she's seeing what you're seeing and experiencing that in her field. You talked a little bit about when we conceive of mental health, both with infant and early childhood, but I think also when we conceive of it generally, about taking on pathologies or taking on a lens of pathology with that. What's a model that you utilize in your work that counters that or can?
Oh, yes. Oh, for us. Yeah, yeah. Well, I will say increasingly we are understanding how Black liberation theology is impacting how we move through the world, how we move through the work, the kinds of programs we set up. And so, I mean, some of your listeners might, and I'm a big book person, might be familiar with Rest is Resistance by Tricia Hersey. And if you're not familiar with it, I would highly recommend getting a copy for you and a sister friend. They also have a rest deck of cards for inspiration. This is the one I have on my altar, my desk altar right now. I am magical and divine. Anyway, so the rest is resistance is really rooted in Black liberation theology. And Black liberation theology, I can kind of tell you the central tenets of it, but this is like for us part of what we're trying to live out in the ways that we care for ourselves in our work, the way we care for one another, and what we try to promote in the early care, in the early childhood community, both with early care and education and mental health. Early childhood mental health. So we know that Black liberation is rooted in Black spirituality, Black religious thought, and Black. You hear me talk a lot about history because yes, Black liberation. We need to know our history. We have to relearn it. We have to understand it. We have to understand the historical condition of our people. We didn't just end up this way, being at our children and our communities being at the bottom of all these child well-being lists. We need to know our history, and in our history, sometimes it's painful. Activates those kind of what we've inherited, intergenerationally. It activates those wounds, those trauma wounds. And also, history gives us wings. It gives us roots. It gives us strengths. There's so much more to our history than we were taught when we were in school. So Black liberation also says, while we, uplift our spirituality, the sacred Black religious thought, and our history, we also can't ignore the history of the inhumanity at the hands of white folks. Okay. So Black liberation also says we have to name it. We look at it, we see it, we need to address that too. Black liberation theory or theology embraces messages of self-love, self-worth, care, rest, right? Despite what white supremacy has said about us and our bodies. Uh, Black liberation elevates the connection between faith, hope, and liberation. So when we bring it back to our equity work, yep, even in our professional spaces, what we're doing increasingly at Indigo is asking people to consider bringing their own sacredness and spirituality out of the closet. And so when we think about creating unapologetically Black spaces, when we think about sister circles, when we think about racial affinity groups, it's not just this intellectualized, can we come together and talk about issues in our field? Can we come together and express our faith, our hope with one another, our liberation? Can we bring the sacred in? Is spirit welcomed here? And so increasingly what we're seeing is there is an appetite for this, and not just among Black folks, across the board. People are hungry for something different. We are understanding that in order to transform the world, we have to transform ourselves, and the liberation happens from the inside out. So those are some of the I guess the worldview that really permeates in even how I show up in spaces, how I prepare even for this podcast. I think I mentioned to you I did my meditation. I moved my body this morning. I've got my altar on my desk with a candle and some incense and some stones for communication. It's like whatever your jam is. How do you show up fully for yourself? Even if it's something you might not express in a meeting, you can still carry that with you. You can still carry that light and that spirit with you in these spaces, and it can also protect you if you are in predominantly white spaces. But I'll stop there for now. I love talking about this.
Just keep going, Dr. Eva. I will be the one to stop you. Okay. No, I love it. I feel like I think I was telling you when we were preparing for the show that this particular season, many conversations have been around liberation, and what it means to understand who you are, where you came from, what forces have contributed to your space, but also the other side of loving yourself and loving your history, a history of resistance, a history of creating these like unapologetic spaces for Black people to love themselves, love each other. And so I love the theme. And as you were speaking, I was just like, oh my gosh. Like we just gotta watch all these episodes in a row. It really is
Yeah.
like, I don't know, uplift and just remind you that even if you are doing, I think the important message that I take away that I want to just kind of bring echo, if I may, is that this work is hard work, and this work tasks the soul, and that the ways that you like knowing how you fill your cup and how knowing how you rejuvenate, but like don't forget that and take that into this space and into your fight, because you need it. And you just showed us how you did that. I want to come visit.
I'm telling you, like this is it. Like it's so interesting. I less interested these days in spending my energy convincing white folks to do the right thing. And I'm more interested in spending my energy, I don't know, finding spaces where we can thrive, supporting spaces where we can thrive, really deepening our understanding of this work of liberation, especially on behalf of families with young children, on behalf of our communities. So yeah, it's, we, we change too, right? Our focus throughout life, throughout our development, throughout our careers. And I think one of the things that I do love about this crone season of my life, like I listen to this podcast that I love. Also, I don't know, Dr. Erica, if you've heard of it. Maybe you're too young, but it's called the Black Girl's Guide to Surviving Menopause. And oh my gosh, it is just like it's debunking, like it's decolonizing this image of the crone and what it means to go through the change. And I'm just embracing that so much. And I tell you this because one of the benefits of kind of getting over that hill is that you just don't care so much about people, what they think and their reactions. You're more likely to do you, less tolerance for the BS. You're just more likely to do you. And so I appreciate that part of it. So I am finding that in my own life and career, I'm becoming more bold and becoming more unapologetic about really asserting what I believe is needed for the healing in our community.
Oh, I love that. As you were speaking about like your shift in career and your boldness, which I love. When you're doing professional development, like in the machinery, are you asking or showing like professionals how to create these spaces for themselves in addition to like, may I say, like the technical work that they're doing? And what does that like look and sound like for you?
Oh, yes, that's a big part of what we do. So let's see, last year we piloted a small group equity facilitator, kind of a coaching pilot. What we found in infant and early childhood mental health in 2020, our dual pandemic of racism, police brutality, and also the dual race, the pandemic of racism and the reckoning that I think mostly white folks had, and all the marching that we many of us did. And everybody was all about DEI, right? 2020, 2021, right? Um, it was very clear that there were not enough people in who were firmly rooted in infant and early childhood mental health, firmly rooted in justice and equity principles, and had the skill set to, as you know, Dr. Erica, to do facilitation. Those are skills. Just because you know something about equity, and let's say, for me, for example, I was a researcher, I had to learn, I'm still learning how to do facilitation well, to hold spaces and co-create healing spaces with others. So that's a big part of what we do. We have a template that we use for spaces, and so we model, we coach, we mentor folks who want to be in those facilitation spaces. And then with professional development, I do a lot of retreats and symposia, and we always start with a lot of attention, like how will we co-create our container. With our work, you don't just kind of, especially when you're in mixed company or in predominantly white spaces, we do have to warm up. And so what does that mean? So I do a lot of explaining of how we bring our bodies to the work, how we bring our whole selves to the work. What does it mean to be grounded before you jump into having these conversations, especially in mixed company? So yeah, that's a really big focus of what we do. And what we assert is that, you know how like at the end of a professional development event, people want the recommendations, the key takeaways, the bulleted list of what to do. I have spent a fair amount of time and energy just kind of resisting that, because the way equity unfolds, if it truly is coming from the inside out, you start to see equity, you start to see where the levers are, you start to see where the low-hanging fruit is, you start to see your own medicine that you're being asked to bring to the village. You see it differently, and it's going to look different for each person. Yeah, so yeah, we that's our process. We have a framework that we developed, a transformational framework specifically focused on equity and infant and early childhood mental health, and we use that framework in most of our professional development offerings.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much for sharing everything. I want to say like as I reflect on the conversation, I'm like, whoa, all this information has dropped. I think even Brianna Match is like adding different things to her reading list.
Yeah. Oh, I've got, yeah, actually, I would love to. I showed you two books already. For those who are interested, Rhonda McGee, The Inner Work of Social Justice. Um, I don't know if you're familiar with Resma, My Grandmother's Hands. Resma Menakem. Oh, and yeah, anybody interested in trauma and understanding it specifically through a racialized lens, through a somatic or body lens, this is beautiful. We love Adrienne Marie Brown, Emergent Strategy. She's my girl, and then we can't forget Auntie Bell Hooks, right? All about love. So yeah, these are this is my that's my those are my lineages, and I hope that we can all um, take some time to think about, like, what are your lineages, Dr. Erica? Like, what are your lineages? Who and what is influencing how you show up in these spaces?
Yeah, I love this. I'm very excited. I feel like I have like not homework, but like additional work to do. Like I love like you presenting your lineage. It feels like a new question to ask people.
Yes. It's my
Yeah.
favorite interview question to ask people these days. I do a lot of interviews. I'm usually in your seat, but yeah, I love learning because you learn
Yeah.
about a person who a person is. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Well, as you do on this show, guests like you, Dr. Eva, have dropped knowledge, which you've done so much of, not just in the books that you share with us, but the frameworks that guide your work and the frameworks that are guiding the work that you're doing with others. And I think not only in the infant and early childhood mental health space, but I think any space we were trying to push for equity, like the notions of how you show up and how you warm up a space so that these conversations can happen and this work can emerge and this medicine, as you say, can be given to the world. I would love for you to drop one more piece of inspiration on us as we close out the show. So, Dr. Eva, what healing inspiration can you offer our community of social justice warriors as we work toward equity, justice, and of course, liberation?
Oh my goodness. I think in this moment, what is coming to me, and I'm not sure why, but it's pretty deep. Okay. Representative Maxine Waters, right? She's a California representative. Reclaiming my time, reclaiming my time, reclaiming my time, reclaiming my time. That is so deep. And when I first saw I don't know if you remember the clips of her kind of saying reclaiming my time. She was in the Congress chambers, and somebody kept interrupting her. I think a white man kept interrupting her, and she was like reclaiming. If you haven't seen it, Google it. You'll see the video. People have made memes out of it, reclaiming my time. And I think that for many of us, for Black women, it hit us in a very visceral way. And so this summer with my family, we went to the African American Museum in Washington, D.C. If you haven't been yet, whoa. And there was a tiny little kind of display. It was probably one of my favorite things when I was there, reclaiming my time. I was like, oh, and there were pictures of chairs. And so it's connected to resting. It's connecting to our bodies, which have historically been the site of oppression. And now our bodies must be ground zero for the site of our liberation. So reclaiming our time, what does that mean? Reclaiming our time. Sorry, baby, I'll make you breakfast in just a second. Snack on these blueberries. I need to go meditate. That's me reclaiming my time, right? Saying no to certain activities in the evening because I know at my age, moving my body every day is non-negotiable. That's me reclaiming my time, or allowing my house to be messy so I can move my body. That is me reclaiming my time. So I think, connected to issues of worthiness, especially around our bodies, so multi-layered, how we feel about our bodies, what the media has told us about our beauty and our sacredness and our goodness and even our juiciness. Like how do we reclaim what is ours? And so that's the deep work. So when you think about or hear reclaiming my time, what does that mean for you? It's going to mean something different for all of us, but in this time and space right now, today, on a Friday, reclaiming my time, what might that mean for you today? And how do you infuse more and more of that into your life? It's something that I've been asking myself a lot lately.
Oh, Thank you so much. Reclaiming your time.
Yes.
Oh,
How are
I
you going
love
to
it.
reclaim your time today, Dr. Erica? What are you going
Oh,
to do to reclaim your time?
man, I don't know, but I'm going to do something for myself.
Yes. Yeah.
By myself.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's right. Yes. I have a very strong relationship with time. So when I say I want to reclaim it, everyone will know.
Everyone will know.
They will all know. Oh my
Proclaiming
goodness.
it.
Yes. Now. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Dr. Eva M. Shivers, for accepting my invitation to speak about what matters most to you. And I appreciate that this episode was around mental health, that you reminded us of the mind body connection and how important it is to be aware and show up in our bodies so that we can do this work. So I appreciate that connection that you have given us throughout the show. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to listen and learn from you, especially about why and how you have chosen to make the world a more just place. So
Oh,
just a few reminders. We're here on the second and fourth Fridays at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, but this time just given to weather. I will be back next week on October 11th. We'll host Trelawney Michelle, writer, Afrofuturist, anthropologist. And founder of the nonprofit Crack Teat. She will talk about how she gathers and shares the wisdom of Black and Indigenous elders, healers, and artists while teaching young people how to do the same. And yeah, Dr. Shivers can't even stay still. I know. I'm telling you. I was like, I feel this season, I can feel everyone's connections. Be sure to tune in on LinkedIn and YouTube, and also like and share our upcoming and past shows, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. So in 6 seasons, we have created what I believe is a substantial and inspirational body of work. We have 40 plus episodes so far, y'all. And so these have been curated into playlists for your viewing and listening pleasure. And so if you love today's show, which I know you did, be sure to check out the following Remix EQ Live playlist on the Blue Knowledge YouTube channel. Critical perspectives to build your knowledge about different frames and perspectives for understanding this work. We have education. And then we also have Amplify Women playlist. And I think I have been inspired to start a liberation playlist. We now have enough guests in which it can stand on its own. So that will be happening. I'll let y'all know next week, probably. Okay. And then in the meantime, I invite you to view my recent TEDx talk entitled Building Community to Make the World a More Just Place, which is inspired by my interviews and experiences on this show. I invite you to visit the Remix EQ Live webpage for episode announcements, recordings, learning about our inspiring guests just a little bit more. And also while you're there, you'll discover new ways to support the Remix EQ Live community, such as a donation or love offerings, as well as purchasing merch like our Amplify notebook and message tees. Do check out our Blue Knowledge store. It's retail therapy for social justice warriors. And while you're on the show's web pages, please be sure to poke around the website and learn more about my business, Blue Knowledge, which advances equity in schools and communities through collaborative research, inclusive evaluation, and equity-driven professional and community learning. You can also follow us on LinkedIn, the Blue Knowledge YouTube channel as well. You can subscribe to our newsletter. And of course, I invite you to connect with me here in these digital streets. And if you're in Savannah, the streets. So thank you, Remix EQ community, for your engagement, your encouragement, and your rally, which is how we recognize, appreciate, learn, love, and take care of you as you work to make the world a more just place. I'm your host, Dr. Erica Tate, and this is Remix EQ Live. See you next time.